Right. Again, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I think we can start now. I see there's quite a lot of people that have joined already, and there's some that's going to log in. We are cognizant of the time, so we're going to keep course along. Firstly, welcome to Sovereign Group's Residency and Citizenship Program webinar. We're quite excited about this morning's topic. It's quite a hot topic currently. There are quite a lot of developments in this space currently, so we hope that you'll have quite a lot of takeaway to take with you after today's webinar. My name is Raul Wichtman. I'm the Managing Director of Sovereign Trust SA Limited, and I'm going to be facilitating this morning's webinar. We just have some housekeeping before we actually start. Firstly, the session is being recorded, so just be cognizant of that. We will be sending the link with recording after the webinar is finished, so don't stress if you miss one or two points. Firstly, and then secondly, also, we are cognizant of everyone's time. It's an hour webinar slot, so we will try to get through everything within the hour. If we do get to the Q&A session, and it does seem that there's quite a lot of good questions, we might go 1 or 2 minutes over the allocated time, but of course, feel free to log out if you do have other arrangements that you need to get to. To the right hand of your screen, you'll see the questions box, so feel free to post your questions there. And we will endeavour to work through all those questions at the end of the webinar. If we don't get to your questions, please don't panic. We will pull those questions from the system and then get in contact directly with the respective persons and answer your questions. Thank you very much. I'm going to, in a few seconds, just start to introduce the panelists of today's webinar. Firstly, to the left of my screen, to my immediate left, we have Mr. Kerry Prattley. Kerry is the head of Sovereign Group's Residency and Citizenship Services Department. Kerry has 25 years experience working within the international wealth management sector, and he is currently based in Asia since 2000. I think currently, Kerry, you're on Phuket, so a bit envious there of you for that. Kerry is also a qualified member of the Personal Finance Society and a professional member of the Investment Migration Council. So those of you who don't know what the IMC is, that's sort of the global body that oversees specifically the residency and citizenship services sector, and it's quite a well-known sort of body regulating this industry type. Within Kerry's role, he's responsible for the planning, developing, and implementing of Sovereign Group's residency and citizenship program offering. So to the far left of my screen, we have Mr. George Ayumamitis. George, I believe I did do your surname justice. George is a born and bred Cypriot, and he is the Managing Director of Sovereign Group's Cyprus office and also heads up the Department of Business Development there. George covers Cyprus, Greece, but also the neighboring jurisdictions to Cyprus in terms of the work that Sovereign does throughout the group. He is a full member of the Society of Trust and Estate Practitioners, and is also a member of the board of Cyprus Fiduciary Association. This is the organization that governs the corporate and trustee services sector within Cyprus. Now, lastly, the lovely lady in the middle, this is Miss Danny van Vieren. She's a consultant with Sovereign Trust SA. She's a certified financial planner, and her background is in the financial and fiduciary space with one of South Africa's largest providers in the sector. She writes quite a lot in terms of a lot of articles on this point of residency and citizenship programs, and helps quite a lot of clients within the service sector. So just maybe to start off with this, you'll probably have noted in the media there's quite a lot of talk regarding residency, regarding citizenship, quite a lot of changes lately, especially in the European programs. Some programs falling away, some changes, some criteria increasing, decreasing, etc. I think maybe Kerry, let's start off on your side. We see a bit of a trend developing there in terms of all these changes. Does this spell the end of a residency and citizenship planning for individuals, families, and companies?
Thanks, Ralph, for the introduction. In answer to your question, no, certainly not. The residency and citizenship industry is, like many others, continuously evolving with the creation of new government programs, the incorporation of additional options and benefits within existing programs. And also, in some instances, the removal of programs no longer considered beneficial to the economy or society. What we're seeing within the investment-related residency market specifically is actually something I've always agreed with, which is a move away from only residential property-related investment option towards others that create added local economic, employment, scientific, and/or cultural value. There are also many other programs which we'll go into in a minute, which people often aren't aware of, which are based on self-sufficiency. So they aim to attract those who can support themselves and who wish to move and spend more time in country.
Right. The specific points maybe on that. What are some of the key points that one needs to be cognizant of to maybe just position yourself and the advisor really to identify the most suitable program, the RSPI program for a particular jurisdiction or that might fit the client better?
Well, this is it. I mean, what we see in the market is, there's a lot of information out there regarding one or two programs, and the reality is, like with any form of fiduciary or financial planning, there's no one solution that fits all. So, in answer to the question, the reasons that what we need to consider with clients, it's best if they talk to us and we can run through, a fact find and identify their requirements. But the things we're looking for are, why are they establishing a second residency or citizenship? Do they intend to move to their chosen country now or in the future? And, such things as, what sort of investment are they thinking of, what their budget is, or if they intend to establish a business or continue with their existing business. There's many different reasons and why people would be contemplating taking out a second alternative residency, and obviously we need to get to the bottom of that, and then once we've done that, we're able to advise accordingly.
Okay. There's quite a few programs that are, let's call them industry favorites that people go to, and I think there's quite a few programs that actually aren't getting the necessary attention that they do deserve. What are the latest news in terms of alternative or unknown options available out there that might be of interest to people looking at a second or alternative residency program?
Well, of interest, there is a lot of news. There's been a lot of increased activity within this sector. If we go back to even last year, the UK residency program, residency by investment program, was closed with immediate effect. That also happened this year with Ireland. And also potential, there have been potential amendments announced to programs in Portugal this year, Greece, Spain, potentially, and others. So, there's always news coming out. Often the announcements are made by political parties or individuals without actually the law being written into force. So it does create a lot of confusion or speculation and rumor. And another thing to consider is that the information generally available to the consumer, whether it's being promoted directly at them or through various media channels, is primarily investment based, and therefore often dominated by the investment related providers and managers. And so as a result of that, those interested in obtaining second residency are not always aware of the many different types of residency programs available. There are many, and I'll cover them briefly. They were listed on I think they're listed on the main screen, aren't they? No, not at the moment. But broadly speaking, we can categorize the different types of residency programs into 6 groups. So, as we've just mentioned, residency by investment programs, also known as golden visas. They receive a lot of attention, and in short, they provide a residency permit in exchange for a significant investment or donation. These programs are very popular because they usually have very low minimum stay requirements and can therefore provide, be applied for and used as an alternative option in case something happens in the future. And also, it's for planning for future generations and so forth. Another lesser known option are startup and business investment programs, which provide residency permits to applicants who establish or invest in a business, thereby creating local employment opportunities and economic activity. With this sector, the minimum stay requirements vary, but the amounts needed as an initial investment can be very low. So that's often, that's worth considering for a number of, certain people. One relatively new option, and the third option I'm talking about, is business incubation programs. Actually, not that new in some countries. They've been running for a long time, but new to others. For those who wish to invest in specialist business, work with business incubation partners to establish a local business and create economic activity that way. These also have, low minimum stay requirements and can be used as a second option. Financially independent visa programs, which I mentioned earlier on, they're for applicants who can demonstrate a retirement income or a passive income, and generally require, for those people who intend to move to a country or make it their main place of tax residence. And then going on from there, relatively new are the digital nomad and remote working visas. As I say, recently addition, since COVID, these have become much more popular, and many countries now have them. And they allow visitors a short-term visa, if they wish to work remotely as an employed or they are employed or self-employed and work outside of the country. They can obtain a short-term visa to work in many countries nowadays. And lastly, and very importantly as well for those moving around, is tax residency programs. Often people will take advice and consider different types of residency programs, but not consider, what the tax implications are for making a move. So these programs provide preferential rates for non-domicile individuals who establish tax residencies, and obviously the advantages can be numerous. So, just to sum up, we always suggest to clients that you plan and consider your options in full, not only understand the benefits of a program, but also any potential drawbacks that they may possess. So, that's a very brief overview, but I just wanted to highlight what those are because many people aren't aware. So, but our residency and citizenship team members such as Danny and George and yourself are obviously available to discuss all of these options and to plan and implement the most cost-effective, tax-efficient strategy that's suitable for each client's personal needs.
Yeah. Now, Kerry, with obviously Portugal, historically has been quite popular with a lot of clients for various reasons. Of course, we've noted that with the golden visa, change to the golden visa, that's obviously maybe coming to an end at this stage. But there's quite a few other programs that Portugal has to offer, and there's one particular one that I think is also not emphasized enough in terms of its benefits compared to the other programs, notably the Portugal Highly Qualified Activity Visa Program. Maybe shed some light for us on that one.
Yes, it's relatively new in Portugal. As I say, it's been available in Canada and other countries for a while, this type of program. And obviously I wanted to touch on the subject today with all the news that's going on with Portugal at the moment, but it's an excellent example of the evolution of the alternative residency market with new programs being developed to meet the needs to generate added economic, employment, research and cultural value to the local, to the country in which people are establishing residency. So the HQA program has been specifically designed for business professionals and entrepreneurs who wish to launch and provide strategic direction to an innovative business in Portugal. As I mentioned, a similar option is also available in Canada. Applicants can choose whether they are active or passive within the business, because they are basically, they're assigned and they work with an experienced third-party incubation partner who assists them and to coordinate their residency visa application, business idea formulation, the business establishment and ongoing management, as well as the implementation of research and development projects. So, you know, in short, the HQA, there's a lot to this program, but given you know, that everybody is aware of what they say they're going to close the golden visa in Portugal, it's a great option, alternative option for business professionals and entrepreneurs. It provides the same flexible benefits as the Portuguese golden visa, but with multiple business creation, research and development opportunities. It has a lower investment requirement of around 185,000, including all fees included. And it also, one thing people may be aware of is there's a significant backlog with the golden visa nowadays in Portugal. It has a fast processing time of 3 to 4 months. So we've got clients who are applying for that. It fits actually better with the sovereign model, if you think about it, because of our history. But you know, it's a very good example of a relatively unknown residency program that is coming to the forefront. On a country like this, another example, you know, of a country that provides a range of relatively unknown alternative residency programs is Cyprus. And obviously, George is going to discuss that. We're going to be moving on to that into a moment. But the reason we've chosen to highlight today is because, you know, we've obviously had an office there for many, many years, and we've been offering these services the same amount of time. But, you know, Cyprus is a great example because it offers, you know, a residency program option for all of the 6 residency categories that I've just discussed.
Right, thanks for that, Kerry. I appreciate the input there. George, jumping on the plane from down the Mediterranean and landing in sunny Cyprus. Obviously, George, quite a exciting jurisdiction, really, not just for residency, but certainly for business, for investment, for intellectual property. Maybe that's a webinar for another time, but maybe if you can shed some light for us in terms of what Cyprus has to offer in terms of the range of cost-effective and tax-efficient residency permit options.
Thanks, Ralph. I'll just pick up from what Kerry said before, the fact that when it comes to this residency option, there is not one fits all. So there should be, and there are different options for whatever. I mean, there could be a person or a family that is interested to or has a mind in investing a certain amount, okay, but wants that very, very quickly. So time is of essence. So there should be an option there. Or there are options, for example, or there are cases where somebody says, you know what, I mean, I would like to have like a plan B, a second residency, but I wouldn't like to invest like too much or anything. But if it takes a bit longer, no problem, it's not rushed or anything. So when it comes to Cyprus, and we'll actually move on to my slides to present today, Cyprus have cost-effective and tax-efficient resident permit options, and that I believe covers for all the different needs and wants. Yeah, I would like to go through this. I mean, I have a presentation to go through all the options, including the characteristics, including the requirements there, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions later on. So the most popular, if I can call it, option the last few years is the permanent residence permit, but actually the fast track version of it, the option, because there is a fast track and there is a slow track, if I can call it, which I will be referring to that as well. Prior proceeding though to the characteristics and why somebody to go to the permanent residency permit, the fast track, I would just like to say in a nutshell, present Cyprus. Cyprus' position in the Eastern Mediterranean has a captivating climate and lifestyle, with year-round sunshine, unique natural landscapes, a rich and diverse culture and history, enabling a wealth of style choices of every aspiration and tastes. It's an appealing relocation destination for expats and their families. It has been the case for years now. High quality healthcare is provided through both the national health system, the public system, as well as the private sector, while a well-established education sector ensures excellence in learning through multilingual, internationally recognized programs from kindergarten all the way to university. This is something that somebody living in Cyprus, being an expat from any country, I mean, it's one of those things that you actually feel like home because you have everything there, and you won't feel the fact that, okay, I'm somewhere that I don't feel that I'm there or I belong there. And lastly, the island offers an enviable lifestyle in the most safe and vibrant setting, harmoniously blending traditional and contemporary elements while providing the perfect combination to enjoy life as well as great work-life balance. As you said at the beginning, Raf, I'm born and raised in Cyprus, but if I could comment, I'll tell you that the work-life balance is something that as a father of two, I'm actually experiencing. So it is something that somebody will find in Cyprus. Now, this is for Cyprus. I didn't want to go, I can talk for hours about Cyprus. I don't want to do that. I just want to go into the options and programs. Starting from the fast-track permanent residency permit. So what are the main benefits? So why somebody to go to that? The PRP application procedure is very efficient in Cyprus. It doesn't take more than 2 months. So from the time that we submit the application, in 2 months' time, the whole procedure will be finalized and the permit will be obtained. Having the permanent residency in Cyprus is visa-free travel across all European Union countries. There is an eligibility to Cyprus citizenship by naturalization currently after 7 years. So somebody having the permanent residency and keeping, of course, maintaining the permanent residency after 7 years is eligible to apply for a citizenship as well. There are unofficial discussions on making this 5 years, but there is nothing official yet. So 7 years is what it is the case right now. Also, very, very important, Kerry actually pointed that out, the eligibility to apply for the very beneficial tax residency in Cyprus. I'm actually having a slide just for that later on. Currently, it is not necessary to reside in Cyprus, but a visit once every 2 years is required. So that's not bad, especially when compared to other European programs. No language skills required and no interview. Again, when compared to other programs, this is very attractive. And lastly, residence applies to the applicant's spouse, minor, and unmarried children of up to 25. Again, I'm mentioning more information later on about this, but the whole application covers for the whole family, including the spouse, minor, and unmarried children. The part with the unmarried children, they just need to show proof that they are financially dependent to the family, to the applicant and the spouse, either, let's say, studying or something like that. So moving on, the investment criteria, so the requirements to what one needs to invest in order to get the permanent residency in Cyprus through the fast track option. There are 4 different investment criteria. The first 2 are the most popular ones, more straightforward one. But there are the other two options as well. So I'll start with the investment in residential property. It needs to be a new residential property only, and it needs to be purchased from a Cyprus-based property developer. The amount, it needs to be at the least 300,000 euros plus VAT, and should be invested. That should be invested and should be deriving from abroad. So we need to prove at the time of the application that these are actual funds. The actual investment is done with funds coming from abroad. Proof of the payment of the whole amount should be submitted as part of the application. It's what I just said. So when it comes to the residential property, there are choices. It's very easily to find one property of 300,000. It could be a house, or one might have a choice and say, you know what, I would like to have a bit more diversity. So I would like to, let's say, have two different housing units, again, with a minimum amount of 300. The property can also be bought by a Cyprus company. There are many clients who have shown interest into that, provided though that the company is registered in the name of the applicant or the applicant together with the spouse. Of course, it goes without saying that they must be the sole shareholders of that company. As I said, many clients are considering this for a number of reasons, tax and other. Now, the second option, in case somebody doesn't want to invest into the residential property, the amount mentioned, there is the option of commercial property, more business, if I can call it, thinking behind this. And it has the flexibility that it can be either new or a resale, which, trust me, there are many options out there. Again, the investment amount is 300,000 euros plus VAT, if applicable, not always, sorry. And it could be invested in different types of commercial real estate. I'm giving some examples here, like shops, offices, hotels, developments, a combination of all this. Again, we need to show proof that the actual investment has taken place. Now, the other two options, as I said, not as popular, but available in the program, is the investment in share capital of a Cyprus company. A company should be based and operate in Cyprus and employ at least 5 people. So somebody that is interested into investing in shares of a Cyprus company needs to have this very tick the box of the being a Cyprus company and employ 5 people. And lastly, again, with the idea of what I said before, people might be interested into having a more diverse portfolio when it comes to investment, because we are talking about an investment here. The Cyprus government have also introduced the investment in units of a Cyprus registered fund. Yeah. The example there is alternative investment funds and all the registered alternative investment funds, etc. So the applicant is required to make a total investment. Again, the investment amount is the same, the 300,000, in investment units of a licensed and regulated fund in Cyprus. The regulator of funds in Cyprus is the Cyprus Securities and Exchange Commission. So these are the options when it comes to investment for the PR in Cyprus. Now let's see the qualifying criteria. So when the time comes for the authorities that will apply to see whether this applicant or spouse or the dependents qualify, the following criteria needs to be met. Number 1, the applicant should have a secure and steady annual income of minimum 50,000 euros. Also, in case that together with the application, there will be a spouse or financially independent children, as previously mentioned. That's an additional income that needs to be demonstrated, which is 15,000 for the spouse and 10,000 for each, for every financially dependent child. Now, the income, it could be, or it needs to be derived from abroad. Mentioned this before as well, and it can include any type of income: salaries, pensions, dividends, fixed deposits, rents, any. The important point here, which was actually included in the criteria very recently, is the fact that the income needs to be proven through the tax return of the applicant from back home. So if we say that the 50,000 we're presenting, or even more, are from, let's say, salaries or pensions or dividends from a company or anything, these needs to be listed, they need to be stated in the latest tax return of the applicant. So that's number one. Number two, the applicant plus spouse and children over 18, if part of the application, must submit a certificate of no criminal record, of course from back home, and of being under no investigation for criminal offences attested by relevant authorities of the country of his or her residence. This, as you will see down the line with the rest of the options, or the rest of the permits, this is always there, and it goes without saying that the government wants to secure that there will be no issues. Moving, in cases of investment in non-residential option, the investor needs a residential property in Cyprus. Now, clarify here. What we said before is the fact that the client might choose, let's say, to go with the funds option, or go with the commercial property, or invest in a company. At the end of the day, it's a residence permit. So we cannot say that somebody from country abroad invested in Cyprus, got a permanent residency permit. All right, so I do understand it ticked the box of the investment criteria. All right, but at the same time, it needs to reside in Cyprus or show that there is a residential property. The fact, though, that the investment was done, it changes the fact that there is a choice of either owning or renting a property. So this is just to answer a question that might arise. But George, I already invested the 300 in the commercial property or to the fund. Do I need to, I don't know, buy a house or an apartment as well? If you want, by all means. If not, you can just rent. You just need to prove that you have a residence in Cyprus. Moving on, the applicant and the dependent family must have a private medical insurance, international if possible, covering inpatient and outpatient care in Cyprus and abroad. This is something that is requested. And finally, the applicant and her spouse will need to declare that they do not intend to work in Cyprus with the exemption of employment as directors in a company under the relevant investment category. So part of the application, it's also the declaration that we are applying to get a permanent residency. We will be residing in Cyprus, but we have no intention in working in Cyprus. So if the option chosen is to purchase a property through a Cyprus company, then yes, it's okay to be a director of your own company. Moving on is what I said before. Permanent residence permit has both the fast track, which is just 2 months to obtain, but it has the normal track as well. The criteria here. to either purchase a property in Cyprus, new or a resale, or rent. So it's easier. And it goes back to what I said at the very beginning. Different type of investor, different type of applicants, and with different interests. So, George, yes, I would like to have permanent residence in Cyprus, but either I don't have or I don't want to invest 300,000. Is there another option? Yes. So going with the normal track, you can either purchase a property in Cyprus, and as I mentioned here, there is no minimum amount as it was before the 300, but generally what the authorities in Cyprus are looking is a higher financial commitment. So, and from experience, usually a property purchase for at least 150,000 will fulfill this requirement. That doesn't mean that, of course, somebody cannot also rent, which is a criteria that is acceptable. The applicant should have a secure and steady annual income from abroad of a minimum 24,000, which increases by 20 for the spouse and 15 for each child. This, as you can see, it's different from the fast track, which it was 50,000. The whole idea is that a minimum of 2,000 euros income per month net is in a way sufficient for the main applicant, and then there is an increase if more dependent family members are added on the application. As far as process is concerned, when applying for the permits, there will also open a personal bank account in Cyprus. So, and the income, and this is a case for all permits, the income that we need to show and prove that comes from abroad needs to be deposited in a bank account in Cyprus, a personal one, something that we will take care for you, of course. Again, I'm not going to go through what I said before, no criminal record. We will need to have a certificate for everybody on the application. Again, the applicant and his/her spouse should declare that they do not intend to work in Cyprus. And the difference now, this is an important point, the difference now from the fast track is the fact that somebody to obtain the permanent residence permit with the slow track, it can take anything between 12 to 18 months to obtain. So this is for somebody that, what I said before, time is not of essence, but other things are. So if you don't mind waiting for the time, but at the end of the day, you do want to get a permanent residency, there is this option as well. The good thing about it, and this applies for all options, is the fact that from the day that we officially submit the application, the person can reside in Cyprus. Moving on, again, picking up from what Kerry said at the very beginning, the self-sufficiency visa, or as it is officially called in Cyprus by the authorities, a temporary residence permit. This is the third type of permit, is, as the name says, it's a temporary one, is not a permanent, like the other two that we mentioned before. So, requirement, characteristics, and anything else around it. It is valid for 1 year, but it can be renewed on an annual basis. On the basis, of course, that everything that is required is met. Applicant spouse and children under 18 are also included, not 25 like the permanent residency, so spouse and minor children. Permit holders cannot stay out of Cyprus for more than 3 consecutive months, as the permit will be cancelled automatically. Again, we can see the difference with the previous ones. No right to work in Cyprus. The applicant should have a secure steady income. This is the same as the normal track of the permanent residency. The applicant must submit a proof of residence in Cyprus, either owning or renting a property. The applicant must have a clean criminal records. The applicant and the dependent family members must have a private medical insurance, again, as previously mentioned. For the application to be completed, the applicant and family members will need to do some basic medical exams in Cyprus. This is process-wise. When the time comes and we make the application, at the time that it will be required for the applicant and dependents to come to Cyprus for an interview and to actually obtain the permit. Just before that, we will need to also do the medical exams and submit them to the relevant authorities. A popular type of permit, a visa, that many countries, as Kerry mentioned before, have introduced, is the digital nomad visa. And Cyprus, of course, each one of those countries that have introduced a nomad visa as well. Very straightforward, and of course aligns with the needs of the world we're living nowadays. So the beneficiaries for the digital nomad visa are third country nationals who, one, work remotely using exclusively telecommunication technology, are employed and work remotely from Cyprus for a company abroad. This is very important, and we need to actually prove. So when the time comes, we will need to show the employment contract, or in the case of a self-employed, having the customers, the clients being located outside Cyprus. This can be proven with contracts in place and everything, and can prove that sufficient monthly net income to support their living in Cyprus of at least 3,500 after the deduction of any relevant contribution, taxes, etc. So this is what we're looking for. And the persons who are granted the digital nomad residence permit will have the following benefits: the right to reside in Cyprus for a year with the possibility of extending the residence for another 2 years. The family members of the digital nomad have the right to reside in Cyprus for the same period as the digital nomad, however, with no rights of employment and or any other economic activity in Cyprus. This is very important. Cyprus gives the right of course, bringing the whole family to Cyprus, but the actual nomad visa is granted by the applicant. And lastly, in case the applicant remains in Cyprus for a period exceeding 183 days within the same tax year, he is considered a tax resident of Cyprus, provided he is not a tax resident in another country. Or, I would like to add, which brings us to the next point, one could decide that because the tax residency regime in Cyprus is so beneficial, I wouldn't wait on the 183 to pass. I would like to apply for that as well. So this is a digital nomad visa. The Cyprus non-domicile tax residency, the one I have actually mentioned a couple of times until now, and something that we have seen in Cyprus a lot of interest the last few years. And the reason for it is because it is extremely tax efficient and very attractive for people around the world. I would just like to go through some of the tax benefits that somebody will have when obtaining the non-domicile tax resident status. Number one, no tax on gains arising from the disposal of investment. No withholding tax on repatriation of income as dividends, interest, royalties. 3, no tax on dividend and interest income for non-domicile individual for 17 years. For 17 years. So tax-free dividends when you are a tax resident in Cyprus for 17 years. This is actually the number one reason somebody or whoever until now have chosen to become a tax resident in Cyprus, they did it for. Moving on, no tax on retirement gratuity and special tax regime on foreign pension income, only on overseas pension. No wealth tax, no gift tax, no estate duty, no inheritance tax. So that's it from me. I just wanted briefly, if I can call it, take you through the options that Cyprus has and offers, and of course tell you that as sovereign we do have the capacity, including knowledge, experience, and everything required to assist an applicant of any of these permits from A to Z. From whether he's choosing to buy real estate property in Cyprus or invest in some other type, through the whole applications, any due diligence, anything, we will hold you by hand and take you through the whole thing until the permit is obtained. That's it from me, Ralph.
Perfect. Thank you, George. I think we'll have a very insightful discussion on Cyprus. I think it's a jurisdiction has quite a lot to offer on various in various sectors, really. Danny, obviously, just moving over to you quickly, in terms of the whole process of relocating to different jurisdiction, there's quite a few residency options out there. Can maybe just discuss or take us through the whole process of the importance of formulating a comprehensive residency strategy and the value of pre-immigration tax and estate planning?
Absolutely, Rolf. I've prepared some slides, so give me a chance just to get to that. So, of course, planning is crucial in any event, even more so when embarking on an alternative residency journey. So this can be daunting as one navigates through hurdles of misinformation and the important aspects around regulatory, fiscal, and even practical considerations about your family, your business, your wealth. So I'll be going through main points that I go through with clients when we consult, and I think anyone at Sovereign would go into as much detail as they can. But it's really vital that you consult with a professional. It's invaluable in ensuring that the route chosen is correct, and it gives you an opportunity, of course, to optimize your tax situation before you do immigrate. Understand what the process are, the prerequisites, the policies in place. And the first point that I would start with really is understanding the difference between residency and citizenship. And there is a difference, and we see this is something that many people don't understand, and we will go through that in detail here. Of course, residency is a permit. It allows you to live, work, study, work in a specific country within the special bounds or timeline, and that is generally temporary, as Kerry and, of course, George has alluded to during this session. And again, this is usually the doorway to either permanent residency or citizenship, where citizenship is granted to individuals with the opportunity to engage and, of course, have the advantages of rights and privileges and the protections of a specific country, and this is granted for life. So in that case, that leads to two main questions. Do I wish to become a resident or a citizen of a specific country? Or is this specific country my end goal destination? And again, Kerry mentioned it earlier. Do I want to stay here? Is the intention just to, try it out, see how it looks in terms of my business, my preferences, and of course, my family situation? The next point would be, of course, to understand. Thank you, George. To understand how alternative residency or citizenship may impact your tax residency obligation. Again, that's a different element and it's really important. Tax residence is determined under the tax laws of each country. So again, there's a lot of planning that takes place when it comes to tax and structuring for your wealth, and it would lead to four main questions in this case. What are the rules and the obligations of tax residency in a specific country or countries? And then when will I be deemed a tax resident or cease to be a tax resident? Again, those aren't automatic and we need to understand the rules of each country. How does a specific country tax my local assets, the type of asset, the income or the capital? And of course, the same position in terms of my foreign assets. How is it viewed? Am I taxed on my worldwide income and capital like we are, Rolf and I, in South Africa? And it's important to understand the position around that, of course. The third point that I would like to cover is cross-border estate planning and the laws of succession. Now this, again, as passionate as George is about Cyprus, is something that our South African office really focuses on for clients who especially are South African citizens and tax residents. And this is something we could talk about for hours, really. The provision and planning of multi-jurisdictional wealth and assets. Where are my assets based? What are they valued at? What type of asset is it? And again, understanding forced heirship versus freedom of testation like we enjoy in South Africa. There are many countries that have freedom of testation or disposition, and again there are a few that have forced heirship, like France, for example, being a popular example. Then to understand the advantages of holistic international structuring, of course, wealth structuring, something that we do well at Sovereign, and our business interests, where are they based and how would that influence my planning? Of course, very important. International structuring of wealth where trusts and or foundations are not recognized or regulated. Again, really a tricky position when I'm a South African, for example. I have a local trust or I have a foreign trust and I want to move to a country like Portugal. But that's really important, and that would lead to 4 questions specifically around law of succession. So what are the laws of succession of the country where I am tax resident? Am I perhaps tax resident in one or another country? Have I ceased my tax residence legally? That's really important, especially we see that in South Africa being something that is overlooked, unfortunately. What are the laws of succession of the country or the countries where I personally hold assets? Of course, very important. And what does the probate and estate administration process entail, and cost? Cost being also overlooked in many cases, and that is something that, of course, a financial advisor, someone within our group can assist clients with. And then lastly, what are the capital gains tax, corporate tax, gift or donation tax, if it applies, property and transfer tax, estate duty, stamp duty, and in some cases, a few, fortunately, or if you're in a country where you're experiencing wealth tax, not so fortunately, but you might need to consider these taxes. And again, it could depend on the type of asset, where those assets are held, the value of it, and perhaps even how your estate will be devolved in terms of your will, perhaps, or your deed in terms of your trust. And the last point, I am being cognizant of time, so I'm kind of rushing through this. The last point that I'd like to go through would be retirement, investment, personal medical insurance considerations. Of course, again, I'm referring a lot to South Africans, but we see that a lot where people want to go abroad. They need to understand how their investments will be dealt with, their pension. Perhaps they have a pension structure in place that is not as favorable in the jurisdiction where they would decide to live. And that goes to the first point, are we intending to live or just visit in Cyprus or perhaps Mauritius as an example? So international retirement and planning in terms of your investments and those solutions need to be understood and looked at in a lot of detail to understand, of course, how the state will deal with it, how it will be taxed. Your international life insurance provision, again, as a South African, if I move to Cyprus, because George is so convincing, how would that impact my life insurance, and would I need to get different life insurance? And then, of course, government medical services versus private medical insurance. That is very important, especially where we deal with people who are perhaps older. They want that security, they want to understand what their medical provisions are within a country, and that is, of course, something that we need to discuss. So the last 4 questions from my point would be, how does a specific country tax my foreign pension in terms of income or capital? Of course, in many cases, it's rather different. And again, where is that pension? Where am I tax resident? Of course, what are the public services that are available to a resident or a citizen in any other country? So again, really important to understand, what does that country offer? If we exclude Cyprus, for example, the same tune, is usually in the UK or in Mauritius and Portugal. Those are popular destinations for South Africans, and we see those are questions that they ask. And then, of course, what is the accessibility and the quality and, of course, affordability of public services that are available in that country that you intend to live in, or perhaps currently live in if you are still busy with your retirement strategy. And then, of course, your suitability and the quality and affordability of local retirement and private insurance solutions. Again, as South Africans, we are accustomed to certain things in terms of how we do investments and how we handle our pension, let alone our estate planning and wealth planning. But again, if I do go abroad, if I live somewhere else, how would that impact my local retirement solution? And what would my need be for further provision regarding your retirement or investment solutions? So that is a lot of information in what feels like 5 minutes, but I'm not sure, Ralph, if perhaps there's any questions in the chat regarding that.
Sure, thanks Danny for that. And I think it's really a bit of a holistic approach that one needs to take in terms of before you embark on the journey of a residency or citizenship program. There's quite a lot out there. It's quite a specialist field. There's quite a lot of factors one needs to take into account, especially if you are going to move there and become maybe tax resident there quite quickly and haven't seized your tax residency in the previous country. The last thing, of course, you want is to be tax resident in multiple jurisdictions, and then you have the double taxation agreements that needs to be pulled up to see which country has which taxing rights and which source of income. So thanks for that, and that just gives us a good understanding in terms of quite a lot of questions and things that people need to be cognizant of. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm cognizant of the time. I think we are going to cover 1 or 2 questions in the chat box. There's quite a few of them, and thank you for that. We really do appreciate it. As I mentioned, if we don't get through all of them, we will pull them from the system, and we will get in contact directly with the respective persons who posted the questions. I think the first one there, Kerry, I can post it to you. It's the questions as follow. Do you think that the EU will soon impose an EU member state or the EU member states to require a minimum increase of the number of days that the applicants will need to stay in a particular country for them to obtain permanent residency? Kerry, that's for you.
Sorry, I was muted. It didn't work. Look, there's always a lot of questions surrounding the EU government or the EU Parliament and certain members' ideas or opinions regarding residency programs in Europe. The reality is, under European law, citizenship and residency are matters of the state. They're sovereign issues. So whilst there is a lot of pressure from the EU to amend or change or make sure that anti-money laundering requirements, due diligence, and so forth are all put in place, what happened? I mean, the primary objections have been towards the citizenship programs. We can get on to that's quite a long discussion as well, but those who are investing into a country in order to gain direct citizenship. It is possible to do that still in one European country, Malta, but that, as I say, I mean, before this, I've come off a compliance call with our Malta colleagues who are licensed in Malta to do this, and these government, the the due diligence process is so stringent nowadays that you'd be very hard pressed to find anybody of any, with any grey background or anything like that who are applying for these. But in response to the question, most recently the EU suggested that there should be more regulation brought into residency. We don't know if they're going to increase the number of days specifically, because as I say, each country has its own rules. They do have the power to make their own rules. So you can't say that on a blanket statement, but the EU has requested regulation to be brought into play. And to be honest, I quite agree with that. The industry, the individuals we deal with on a daily basis are just your average people, who have done quite well for themselves and who wish to take advantage of the residency programs available and the benefits that they can create for their businesses, their families, their children, future generations, and so forth. So I don't know if they're going to bring that in. They can't do it on a blanket basis because each country decides its own regulation we foresee coming into play, which really is a good thing. And we're given our background as the sovereign group on an international basis and fiduciary licenses and so forth, we're very well placed to take care of that. So we welcome it.
Thanks, Kerry. George, the next question really is for you. It mentions how will the inclusion of Cyprus in the Schengen area, I'm assuming, will affect the Cyprus program or programs?
Yeah, Cyprus have been expecting to get into a Schengen zone for some time now. Unfortunately, it's not yet. What was lately announced, it was that it had entered in a way the Schengen exchange of information between all the Schengen zones. So it's a step towards becoming or towards like engaging more into the Schengen, all countries together. And the other thing is the fact that 2023 is the year that will be reviewed. The application of Cyprus will review again. To answer your question, I believe it will be a big benefit for Cyprus to enter Schengen zone, even though with the way it is right now, it is still very beneficial. It works for a number of different applicants, but of course, it will be an additional benefit.
Okay, excellent. The second question sort of ties up with the previous ones, same person. Cyprus isn't part of the Schengen area. How can they have visa-free travel? I think you mentioned that Cyprus residency holders has visa-free travel in the Schengen area.
Yeah, what I mentioned is visa-free travel throughout the European Union countries, as Cyprus is part of the EU.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. We didn't really cover.
I think what you mean, George,
you're
able, people with residency in Cyprus are able to obtain Schengen visas from embassies within Cyprus. That's correct, isn't it?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Is it? All right. We didn't really cover Spain. I see there's a person that's asking about the Spanish digital nomad scheme. I think we'll reach out to you directly and then just give you some information on that, because I think that discussion is quite a lengthy one in terms of what the options are available with the Spanish one. We have here quite a lengthy question, just brace with me. What options are there for Brits? Kerry, I'm assuming this one will be maybe more in your lap. What options are there for Brits that bought property in Portugal prior to Brexit and didn't require residency visas but now do? I've heard of a D visa. I'm assuming it's a D7 visa, but are the minimum stay requirements ongoing or a once-off to qualify, then giving greater freedom?
Sorry, what was the last bit?
The person's a Brit asking about who bought property in Portugal prior to the Brexit process. They didn't need a residency visa back then. obviously post the Brexit, they're asking, I've heard of the D7 visa, but are the minimum stay requirements ongoing or once off to qualify for this? And does it give the same level of greater freedom that one previously enjoyed?
What, the D7?
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, the D7 is what we referred to earlier on as a self-sufficiency visa. Also known specifically in Portugal, it's known as a passive income visa, because you can't just use any type of income like in, for example, Cyprus. You need to have a passive income, i.e. dividends, pension payments, returns on investments and so forth, to qualify. But yes, it's a temporary visa, so it's you need to renew it every year. But it is assumed that the minimum stay requirements, you are assumed to be a tax resident, that you're spending a minimum, you're spending enough time there to be tax resident. So they're still in place. What we'd need to do is look at your specific situation and advise accordingly. So we can reach out and do that. You have the details.
There are minimums.
Who's asking? Okay.
There are, of course, minimum stay requirements. They're linked to that one as well. But I think in question from this lady, we will get in touch with you just to provide some details specifically relating to the D7 and its requirements and its benefits. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think we are quite a bit over time now, 8 minutes past 12 our time, but of course 8 minutes past your time, wherever you're based in the world. I see some people are dropping off as well. We want to thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us for this webinar. And I do hope that it did add quite a bit of value to your current offering, or your questions, or your thoughts of going abroad. If you do, of course, have any of those further questions or are looking at commencing a process, please do reach out to us here at Sovereign. We are more than happy to link up with you, to book an appointment and really discuss what options are available out there, and yes, and then embark on this journey with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, panelists.